Haha. Hello, everyone, and hello, Chris. You're on the other side. I should pretend I'm looking at you.
That's
So,
right.
how are things going, Chris?
Things are going very well. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk about 24.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you in person and online, and I'm sure everyone shares the same sentiment with me. And yes, 2024, although it's still 2023, that sounds like a time journey in the future.
Also, it's been a bit of a bump because we're used to saying like 24, 25, 26, and then suddenly now we're saying 24 again and 25 again. Definitely been
Oh, yeah,
tripping.
we missed around 2000 versions, right? So,
Yep. Big jump. There's a big technological jump at some point.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And what I'd like for anyone that happens to not know who Chris is, which I doubt that, I'm going to find, there we go, my tabs, and I'm going to bring up my screen. So, Chris Schmidt is Rocket Lasso, and
And my two
he
brothers.
and his two brothers. So it's a family-run business. Generations. How many generations of cinema footage is the first generation? And I have to say that Chris is one of the smartest people I know, and we share a common interest in the technical aspects of cinema 4D and other technologies. And we've had other discussions beyond that. If you want to find his work, all you have to do is go to YouTube Rocket Lasso. So at Rocket Lasso, and this is yesterday's video, the one you're seeing here, which gives us a very brief 1.5 hour outline of the new features. And as usual, Chris did an amazing job getting into all the features in quite good detail. So at this point, there's no reason for us to do the show. Thank you all for coming and watching this intro. Go watch. No, we're going to do something today. We're going to do something today. And Rocket Lasso's homepage is rocketlasso.com. And they make tutorials, they make plugins, and they are regular contributors to Maxon's capsules. So they make a lot of the new tools you'll find in the latest releases that come as node modifiers. And all you have to do is just go to the asset browser and search for Rocket Lasso. I think it's tagged with Rocket Lasso.
Yep. That's all in
Yes.
there.
And yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what they do and how helpful the tools are. So let's do a quick round of housekeeping here. I'm going to maximize my screen, and we can start from the Maxon events, the page where all the events are visible, past, present, and future. And you can search by dates and whatnot. And I guess you all know the drill. If you want to watch all these streams recorded, they after the live stream, depending on the show, we stream live on various platforms. But if you want to watch the recorded tutorials with the timestamps and all that, go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. At the same time, of course, visit Maxon's YouTube channel that has a lot of fantastic work and tutorials and shows. And I mean, you don't need to work. All you can do, you can spend the rest of your life just watching videos on Rocket Lasso, Maxon Training Team, Maxon, on the ZBrush YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, not the Noseman, but the @Noseman. Or you can go to the new Cineversity, and this is the stuff that Joe and I were doing. You can go to Cineversity and watch fantastic tutorials. The old Cineversity is still operational because it has, I think, only around 14,000 videos or something.
Nice.
So it will take you a minute to watch these. If you want to become a certified pro user or a certified instructor, I've lost my ability to speak English. Maybe I should switch to Greek.
Do it.
And hi to all Greeks there. You will find out all the details necessary on this page here. 12 these open, go and read, get certified. Now, if you want a free t-shirt, everyone wants a free t-shirt for the month of September, including the Demystifying Post-Production shows, Ask the Trainer, Maxon color, and everything else, just go to this page here and type Cinema 4D Workflows, one word, all caps, to get your one free T-shirt. You have to pay for the extra fees for folding them, putting them in bags, and sending them to the post office and all that. But other than that, the item itself is free. And I think that's all I have to say about the housekeeping. If I forget something, someone is going to bug me and remind me about that. Oh, I want us both here side by side. Let me close my scene. I'm really bad at producing. That's why in the background we have Carol Johnstone, and he's actually doing all the production. If any mistakes happen, it's because of me. If anything good is happening, it's because of him. So, Chris,
Yes.
what do you find? Let's start with that. The most interesting feature for you personally. I want your personal opinion here. Not
Most interesting.
yeah, the one you most excited.
Oh, they see the two very different questions. I mean, when it comes to excited, everybody loves the Cinema 4D simulation stuff. I love the cinema simulation stuff. It's like my area of specialty. I never talk about this stuff, but like I did work on. I had a buddy who was working on the John Wick 4, and I got to help on the technical side, just creating 8 different simulation rigs. And it goes to when the simulation, like I kind of know it inside of cinema. So adding in the new rigid bodies is amazing. Being able to connect them very easily to the rope and to the cloth is amazing. I love just having stickiness on the rigid bodies. That setting by itself would have been huge in the bullet simulation back in the day. So yeah, that's amazing. Pyros are always super duper fun. We'll be talking about that, I think, a bunch today. And of course, it's kind of like an underdog feature because it's like you can't really show it off too much, but just the fact that a ton of stuff in cinema is way faster now is
Yes,
absolutely
indeed.
amazing.
So this is one I want to. I asked for one. You gave me 5. I understand. It's very.
I'm just excited about all of it. What can I say?
Exactly. The speed increase, which I find astonishing at a certain degree, because it touches much upon MoGraph. That was something that was highlighted in your video. If you haven't watched the video, please go and watch it on the Rocket Lasso YouTube channel. I throw these disclaimers there. Because there are many production scenes that have the speed has improved massively, and all you have to do is open a MoGraph, a heavy scene of the past, and just test it in 2023 and 2024, and there's always going to be a gain. The amount of gain, and this is something I'm going to show as an example a bit later on, depends on how the scene was set up. But I find that general saving time is one of the best things you can give artists. I say not saving time; you're actually saving life. That's why I say, being 57 years old, you start appreciating every minute you have to wait for a blue bar. And I have seen a lot of blue bars going across my monitor throughout my lifetime. So what would you like to show as your first little thingamadoodle? Do you want to show something, or I can start with my simple example of the performance improvement for a particular scene? Whatever you want.
I've got a couple of files I can pop open. They're the same ones I talk about in my video, but it's really fun to show off. And the ones I have, and I think the one you have, these were all from these are all like actual things that were made like during my live stream or during actual projects I was working on. So here I am in 23, so the previous version. And I'm going to pop open this warehouse as a go-to. I'd actually put this file together originally to show off, I think, the new viewport features when R21 came out. And you can see here in 23, it's opening, it's caching some materials, I think, in Redshift, so it's going to take a second. But once it does open, there we go. We got our viewport. I can hit play. I've got this animation set up. You see that the playback, nice looking viewport, but the playback is only, about 7 frames per second. And
let me stop you right there. For some reason, the way the HUD refresh is calculated is not very accurate. So, and I've been told off by developers for very good reason. I do say silly things occasionally, rarely, but occasionally. Open up the calculate FPS. Yeah, just type FPS, and
it's not as fun. It's not as visual.
I know, but it will give you. So for anyone that doesn't know, just hit Shift C, type FPS, drag the calculate FPS in your interface, and click on anim test.
Yep.
And that will give you an average of your scene. It doesn't matter which frame you're on, it's going to play from the beginning. You let it play through. If you want to stop it, you press escape. But it's good to get an average, because depending on what the viewport is showing, what's happening, the frame rate will change. And this will give you a nice average for. So there you go. What is that?
6.75.
6.75. Let's try this in 2024. 6.25.
So pop the same thing open. Where's my scene file? Here we go. Pop it open. It's going to have to refresh those Redshift materials as well. But even that is going to be a bit faster. I'm just going to play manually, and then we'll pull open the calculate.
Yes, please.
Let that show along. There we go. So rewind, hit play. And now you can, I mean, you can feel it immediately. Like we're getting a way better frame rate. So
no, it's too fast. I want you to go back to 2023. I don't like it. It stresses me out. The scene seems not complicated.
And it goes through literally all I did was open up the scene file from, years ago. And this is the speed difference I'm getting. So we went from 7 frames to I'm getting about 30, 32, 34.
Calculate FPS.
Now we'll do that.
So for anyone, while Chris is doing that, and we're going to see the FPS, I don't have much time because it's much faster. All right, click the button, and it has one more thing there, the JSON thing. I have no idea what it. I don't know.
I do not know either. I know, kind of know the format, but
6.25. What is that?
We went from 6.75 to 26.71.
26. So right, you can do the math.
Triple to 4 times faster, depending on which number we're trusting.
So if anyone is wondering how these came about, this is just the genius developers inside Maxon, where they are multi-threading as even more than they can. This is not using any GPUs or anything like that. This is just intelligent people doing a better job of taking a very good software and making it even better. So what you're seeing here is just optimization in the code, and the functionality hasn't really changed. There's no, I don't know if in this initial version there are going to be any side effects, but I haven't seen any. So don't start imagining of this is doing it in GPU. No, this is just optimization using the latest CPU technologies and compilers and all that kind of stuff. It's just a better job tidying up things. So that's what's astonishing about this, and I applaud all the developers and members of the teams that did this. What are you getting there, Chris?
So we're getting 20 frames when I calculate here, about the same in the viewport. And this is a full MoGraph scene, and this is a question I got during my live stream, Rocket Lasso Live. So jump into 24 now.
So that was 20 frames per second, right?
Yeah,
I'm writing it down.
20 frames per second. Open it up, opens instantly. And let's just play through a little bit, hit play. And you'll see I'm at 170-ish. So now we'll calculate FPS, open up, yes, run it.
Yeah, but that's nonsense. No, okay.
Let me hit. Yeah, so 144.
And that's the average, right?
Yeah.
144. Anyway, again, anyone, please post on social media your gratitude towards the developers that put a lot of hard work in doing this, and it's only going to get better. So yeah, speed. Let me show my little
yes, please.
Here, which,
and it goes to some of the detail is there's a lot of work behind the scenes that was being put into the scene nodes, and there's like tons of optimizations and just so much power being built in there. But that's only been felt right now as far as like capsules or if you're in scene nodes. So they've been taking a lot of that technology and building it throughout the rest of cinema. And it does go to like we'll be chatting about this for a couple of days of like the speed improvements, and then after that everybody is just gonna be like, okay, it's just faster, and you won't even think about it until you open up an old version of cinema and you're like, wait, why is it so slow now?
Okay, let me show 2023. This is a scene. So years ago, the great folks at Swordfish, they provided us with the full production scene of the project Talos. And we did some, I did some breakdowns on Cineversity and all that, how to do some of the stuff. And I've kept these production scenes because I always want to know how people use our tools to work. And I've been going through these scenes, analyzing them and so forth. And this is the scene exactly as it was made. I haven't done any optimizations. So as far as 2023, now, what's great about this scene is that as you're playing the animation, as you're playing the animation,
Oh goodness.
you're the camera changes and certain things come into play. So the frame rate of the scene will change depending on where you are. They have a stage object and all that. So I'm going to press Shift C here and put the FPS and let it come up. I just fired it up. There you go. And I want to dock it. That's one of the workflows I like. I create these temporary workflows. Click on this. Now I'm going to stop it. I'm going to at a certain point. I'm not going to let the whole thing run. So now it's restarted. See, you say, oh, that looks interesting. It's good. It's not that bad. Oh, it slows down a bit. And then it's going to switch. Let's see, 150. There you go. So now it's switching camera. And we're waiting. And now we have all these different sweeps, and you can see that the speed is so slow. And for good reason, right? It's generating the splines, it's generating the meshes and all that. I'm going to stop this right here. I'm pressing escape, right? 5.25 is the average. Now let's go and do the same thing in 24 and see what kind of gains we have here. So Shift C, FPS, calculate FPS, click on this button and anim test. So it's going to do its little pre-rolls and all that, and it's going to start animating any minute now. So this is the first part, the slow part, the fast part.
Stop at 182.
And look how faster it is. I pressed escape, although I went more.
Yeah, you went more in the hard part, so it's going to skew it.
But you can see obviously that this is now a usable scene. And this is the big thing about these improvements, that it will make your life better. That's it. That's all. Forget about speed, forget about features and all that. You're going to have a better time working with these scenes. A disclaimer: not everything can be optimized, and this is it's a technological thing. There are certain things that cannot be parallelized, they cannot be optimized more, because the quality of code base in Cinema 4D is already very good. So some of your scenes, especially if you are users that make your scenes meticulously and pay attention to anything that can be optimized, you may not see these giant speed gains. You will see some speed gain. It shouldn't be slow in any case. And if it is, please submit a bug report, because that shouldn't happen, right? That's the only way to help Maxon make Cinema 4D even better, when you offer them the information they need to make things better. So the bottom line is that you will see gains from marginal to huge gains. I think I had a scene that was 100 times faster. Those are the crazy things, where a scene that's previously unusable suddenly becomes ridiculously fast. It's so fast I can't work. I have to slow down my PC. Okay, what I'm going to do, while if we're going to jump to another topic, I'm going to go through the questions as well and see if there are any questions from our audience. And if you do, one thing I ask you to do, which I forgot to ask, is if you can preface your question with capitalized question, as you see it on the screen, so I can easily identify it. I don't have to go through all the posts, because I think we're having 6 million people watching right now. No, we don't. So to jump to the next thread, you were excited about the rigid bodies, which excite me as well. Do you have anything to show us with the rigid bodies, or shall we just go and build something?
Let's see. Do we want to build from scratch? Because I've got example files we can pop open very quickly.
Yes, do that. Let me put your screen online.
All right, let's see what I got handy.
There you go.
I moved files around, so I got to track them down. What's a nice simple one? So I'm going to pop this scene file open, and I was playing around with just emitting cubes, and you'll see that if I hit play, I'm just creating a bunch of cubes up here from the emitter. They're just hanging out. Also, keep in mind, this is a real-world scene scale, so all the numbers are very tiny. So I've got a dynamic cone here, and we've got a collider on this back wall. So what I'd like to do is make these particles become simulated. Now, an important thing to note when it comes to anything involving the new simulation stuff is the tag kind of needs to go on the parent. Like if you're cloning things, it has to go into the cloner. It can't be on the child. If you're emitting things, it can't be on the cube. It has to be on the emitter. So I'm going to right click on there and say simulation rigid body. The rigid body out of the gate is looking very familiar because they copied almost all the settings directly from the bullet simulation. So the things that we're used to. So we've got things like our trigger point and initial velocity and angle, deactivation. We can be setting all sorts of settings in the collision. We've got the same mass that we're used to, except we can also set it is hollow. And we can add forces in. We've got the amazing follow position and rotation. But inside of there, we've also got damping and recoil, which I still haven't gotten a chance to play around with. So I'm curious about the specifics that come along with that. But in this case, what I'm excited for is playing around with some stickiness. So one thing I'm going to change, because it's a really tiny scene, I need to lower my thickness down. So I'll just say 0.1. So here's what it looks like out of the box. Hit play, and I'm emitting particles. You see they're all colliding and they're flying out. I've got some friction in the scene, so they're slowing down, because what I want to do is make some goopy ice cream. So I'm going to change just one setting here, and that's going to be in my rigid body, this new stickiness right here. So I'll just give the stickiness of 5 and hit play. And you can see that all of these are now sticking together. And like just like that, changing one number. And you can see instantly the stuff gooping around, maintaining structure. Like it's not falling out of the cone. It's kind of holding on. So right there, like I said, if that was the only update to the simulation stuff, I would have been happy this version, because I'm going to be playing with this stuff all the time. And you see
don't mesh it.
Pretty dang
Chris,
quick.
Don't mesh it. Don't mesh it. I love the sticky cubes. I've seen the mesh. If you want to see it meshed, go to.
Well, I can turn. Yeah. Well, but having said that, we've got the cubes. I love the way they look, but we could make them even more sticky if we want to. And I'm going to go to my forces. And a trick that I found when you're playing around with cubes like this is I'm going to say that I want to have a very heavy follow rotation. So just like in Bullet, this is going to say, well, the cubes don't want to rotate. They're trying to maintain their original rotation, which is all this perfect kind of 90-degree angle. So that means as they stick, they want to maintain this vertical orientation, which is automatically giving them more structure. They don't want to fall over, but once there's enough weight, that kind of will slide. And you can now see that they're, just by doing a little bit more rotation, that it's really stacking up on top of each other. That's
hilarious. Oh, that's so much fun.
That combination of two. And then you said you didn't want to see it, but I'm just going to
So
activate.
wait. Let me think about it. So if you're moving your emitter from bottom to top, you can actually make it seem as it's stacking things, right?
Yeah, if you timed it correctly, you could probably get a pretty nice stack going. But yeah, just playing around with that singular thing, and this is calculating all of these as cubes. But you could be running these as spheres or more complex models. Popping open another simple file. Every time there's a new simulation, you've got to do things like, where's my rigid body hanger chain? Here we go. We've just got a simple chain simulation.
Show us your folder. Show us your folder.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the. There's a folder, but it's just a big mess of unsorted test files.
Exactly. That's the only way. That's a proper way to do it. If anyone has ordered folders and all that, no. Yeah, there's something terribly wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I think creativity and disorganization, they go together.
Yes. I mean, at a certain point, especially you can share with other people, then okay. But do I have that? Where's that balloon? Here's a nice simple file. So we haven't been really stepping through everything, but here's one that I didn't talk about in my main video, where I've got here's a soft body, and then we're connecting it to a rope. And we connect it the same way we always have. We just make a connect tag here, and I say update live, and I can start sliding that around, and you can see we don't have a connection. And once it's a large enough radius, we do have a connection. So those are now connected together. And we're connected to a rigid body, which is connected to a rope, which is connected to a rigid body. And I'm going to hit play here. And an important thing, I've got a very strong wind, and the wind is blowing straight up. And that wind is only affecting my sphere. So now I can hit play, and you'll see that that's going to super crazy inflate, falling out of the scene. As it gets bigger, the wind is catching it more. The rope is pulling down on it. And you actually get this natural balloon shape. I didn't shape that. That's just the rope pulling down on it. And then you've got it connected to the rope, to the rigid body, to the rope, to the rigid body. So these things just connecting on top of each other. Even right now, we've just got this like super easy to use connect tag. So, if you're used to that workflow, then it's automatically working.
If you want to learn more about how to use the simulation system, go on the News University and check out simulations. I've made a series quite a few months ago that explains a lot of these concepts. and always ask questions. I always need to throw this in. The more questions you ask, the more targeted and focused and relevant our tutorials are. And that applies to everyone, even outside the Maxon training team, the most magnificent training team on the planet. Chris responds to that as well, because I call myself an engineer. I'm not an artist, right, by any stretch of the imagination. I think that Chris and I have this in common.
Yes.
By presenting us your problems, that gives us that's what we want to do, to build upon and create tutorials and all that, because we can sit down and geek on nodes and wires and vectors and matrices, until the end of time, but that's not going to help most of you do your improve your lives and work faster and be more creative. So ask your questions. I was impressed with this scene. Give us an outline of that.
Yeah, pretty straightforward setup here. I'm going to yank these out and do it manually. I got to make sure I do it correctly. So we've got an inner rigid body to be this cardboard tube, and then a very simple helix. It's just a helix spinning around, and I extruded that spline upward. And I made sure that those are perfectly lining up over here. And by perfectly line up, I just mean they get really close. The actual points and polygons do not need to be lined up, which is pretty cool. So if I were to drag my cloth tag over onto the ribbon part of it and drag my rigid body onto my tube, I'll just make a brand new connect object here. And we say connect, again, search live, increase my radius. And you can see that those are finding connections, but those connections don't even need to be specifically from point to point. They are spawning from a point, but then they can find any surface to stick onto. And you could, of course, change the radius up really big, stick all over the place. But I just want this ribbon or this tape to be stuck directly on there.
Chris, geek speak. That's because in the simulation system, the collisions, there are at least three types of collisions. One is a point-to-point collision, one is point-to-edge collision, one is point-to-polygon collision. I know there's one of the developers in the chat. Don't call me out. Let people believe what I just said. But there are many types of collisions, and as far as the connectors are concerned, they use these sort of associations between the different types of objects.
I'm super curious. I mean, I think you're probably right, but we can actually show that. If you go into your project settings, you can go to simulation, and you can activate draw. And under draw, we can say rigid body shapes. And now when I hit play and you go one frame forward, you're going to see the final shape. And well, at least here, it did seem like, yes. Well, no, it's not quite. I thought that might connect directly to the point, but maybe it's just connecting to the edge. But this is actually what the simulation system is seeing. So you can see how that
for troubleshooting, that's extremely helpful to be able to see what the different shapes are. And go through that draw, click on the buttons. Always, you have to advance at least one frame. You need the simulation to activate in order for those helpers to be drawn.
Which is actually a really, really smart, because, well, first of all, it needs to calculate to do that. And if it was constantly updating your calculation as you were dragging things to the viewport, that would be a pain. But instead, you wait until it's actually beginning the simulation. But having said that, here's something that it does make sense, but a lot of people might find a little bit unintuitive in the beginning. And that is, remember I said that all of your simulation tags have to be living on kind of the parent. So if in this case, I want to make a bunch of clones of my ribbon and a bunch of clones of my tube, those cannot be in the same cloner, because I want to run rigid body on one and cloth on the other. So I actually make two cloners, and now I'm going to run a cloner for my tubes and a cloner for these ribbons. And let's see, the tape, did I do it backwards again? I did do it backwards again. That goes in there. Nope, not backwards again. Sorry, just make sure I put the stuff back in the correct cloner. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's all set up now. So I've got 2x2x4. And if I were to move, if I hit play right now, I don't think pretty much anything's going to happen, or maybe just a single one. Yeah, nothing happens because it's on a child. But if I move my tag up to the cloner and I move my cloth up to the cloner, and I also have to move my connector up to the cloner, and because we've got at this point essentially brand new geometry, I have to update my search. So if I drag this, you can see new connections were made, and they're made individually on every object. Exact same setup. I've got no gravity and I've got a big turbulence. So that's what's blowing them around. So now two separate objects. Let me turn off that draw. And now you can see all of those separately drifting around. So that's how you have to build a more complex rig if you want like a bunch of copies of something. But it totally works.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And and it's playing real time. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not a cached animation.
Exactly.
In real time. Look at very responsive and all that.
Yeah, really fun. I mean, there's already been so many amazing like rope animations that people have made and just cloth drifting around. And now we've got rigid bodies to add into the mix. Like it's gonna get crazy. Very exciting.
Okay, let me quickly get to some of the questions here. So
Yes, please.
let me put our faces. Do you prefer this view or do you prefer this view? I'm preparing for winter, right? Don't judge me. Don't judge me. It's already chilly up here, but it's beautiful. So I'm going to go through some questions that Kyle did me the favor of tagging them. Let's begin. Saika L. What's up, Dim? So let's say we have, let me bring up the question, right? So it says, say we have a cloner with a cloth tag, and we want to create a vertex map that will spread through all the clones. So I can use the vertex map in the cloth slots. Is that doable?
So I'm assuming that's a plane put into a cloner. So you're cloning a bunch of different pieces of cloth. You put a cloth tag on the top, and then
wait. Here's how we answer that on the shows I participate. You have me on speed dial, Dimi. Send me a file. That's how, and that's the answer. Send me the file, and it will be a good opportunity to show some of these things. You should be able to do that, though. So you're going to get an answer. Yep.
Yeah, my assumption would be that you could do that because now we can do parametric vertex maps.
Yes.
So if you did make a cloner and it's got cloth inside of it, you're running cloth. You put that entire system into a connect object. Make sure you turn off weld because you don't want the point counts changing. And then you put the vertex map on top of that. Now you could do things like have it get a trigger point and then use the regular freeze technique for starting to grow and have it spread and get a vertex map that way. I'm curious if you could then feed that vertex map back into the system, like into like the cloth tag, and make maybe different parts be sticky or more stretchy based on that vertex map, because that's a bit of a feedback loop. So we'd have to test it to see. I'm not sure.
The one thing which you're very well aware of is make sure you have the correct switch use deformed objects, because by definition it's on. But because the cloth is deforming...
Actually, if you switch my screen, I can visually show this with a file I've got prepped.
Let me go to this.
So very important thing to note, when you first create a vertex map, and then you're going to activate use fields, and then you drag fields in. So in this case, what I've done is I made a random field, pretty straightforward. I'm just using the noise. I think it's pretty much all default as well. But this is going to be on by default. I'm also going to make this quantize. If you haven't played with quantize, it's very nice because you can activate it and drop the power down to one step. And now you get perfect black and white. So 100%, 0%. But anyway, I've got use deformed points on. So now that I'm running a cloth simulation, if I hit play, you're going to see that this map is actually moving. We are passing through. And that's static noise. That noise is not animated. But think of it like a big cloud of noise in your scene, and we are passing right through it. So it's moving around. Meanwhile, if I say don't use deformed points, whatever it looks like here in the beginning, it's going to remember. So now when I hit play, you see it's actually stuck there perfectly, and it will move with my cloth.
Well,
so very important.
Essentially, it records the vertex data, the yellow or red, so 1 or 0 or whatever the number is. It records it on the point. If the deformed object is set to on, then it becomes spatial. It gets
it's live. It updates every frame. Yeah.
Excellent. That was a great example. Yeah, this was another nice scene I saw, and I saw you partially solve those boundary problems as well, which is very, very cool. It became more rigid. That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, let's see another question.
Yes, please.
This was answered by Marco Leone. How can you have a 2023 or 2024? The principle of installations is that if you download an update, so for example, incremental update from 2023 to 23.1, 2023.2, the default location is 1. It's called Cinema 4D 2023. If with the new incremental yearly version, 24, 25, whatever, it creates a new folder. So in the case that you want to have 2 of the previous versions, 2 subversions, you just have to go in the installer and create a new folder. That's all you have to do. But you can have different versions on your computer if you want to go back, if there's some issue, if you want to retain compatibility and so forth.
Excellent. I actually did not know the answer to that one. So.
Oh, Chris learned something from me. There's a big day. Let me mark it down on my calendar. We're going to celebrate it yearly. Okay, let's see what else do we have here. Where were you? I missed. I lost. Let's see. Let's go down. Let's go down. What is the best way? And let's see. Oh yeah, that I just answered that. I answered that. Okay.
People chatting back and forth, which is excellent.
Is it possible to blur a texture directly in Redshift? This is the question.
Blur specifically, no.
No, I think there are ways to do it using OSL, but we don't have a blur node as far as I know. There is, if it's a texture, image texture, I think there's something you could do. I'll have to look into this. So I'm going to leave it tagged. Is there a way to add custom icons to the tools that don't have them, like FPS checker you showed? Oh, that's an interesting one. How do we add to a tool? There could be internal ways of doing that, editing some resource file and all that. I don't know.
Is there still that old giant PNG that used to have all the icons in one sheet that you could just change that? I haven't done that in a while, but there is somewhere inside your installer like a giant PNG image map that is every single icon, and you could just go in there and draw. But if something doesn't have an icon assigned, it might not have a spot on that sheet, and therefore that wouldn't do it that I know of.
Yep. Another question by Blake Anderson is, can you cover new features with a pyro tag, including how it can be used with an emitter?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, we are going to cover that. We have some, I think it's going to take a bit of time. We are going to overrun a bit, so hang in there, everyone. Let's see if there's anything. Question, if it fits for today's session. I haven't read it. We're going to put it out there, hopefully. Is there a way to create a shader-based Boolean tool for Redshift? Well, we cannot do that. If we could do that, we would have done it already. Wink, wink. So that's a highly sought feature that will, if it ever comes to Redshift, it will solve a lot of other problems as well, including nested dielectric problems. Whatever happened to the scene manager? That was node-based. What happened to it?
I think that got retired, honestly. People just weren't using it. And when it comes, I mean, honestly, it goes to, I've been doing the design and animation tour, the DAT show. And I've been presenting a bunch of stuff with nodes and capsules at that show. And for every audience, I've been saying, hey, everybody, raise your hand if you've been using the new node system inside of Cinema. And in an audience of like 50 people, only like 1 or 2 people are saying like, yeah, I've used it and I continue using it. And most people don't even know about the concept of moving a node into the object manager as a capsule. So along those lines, used even less frequently than that was the scene manager, which was sort of like a new node-based object manager, which got introduced. I don't know, what was that? Like R26 or something. And even I presented it in my What's New video and I never touched it again. So I just think it was just a tool that nobody seemed interested in using. And instead, as an alternative, they came up with the concept of capsules. So that kind of covers that basic idea.
Yeah, I think that's how the thing went, that, because Cinema 4D users are extremely comfortable. I think I speak for everyone with the current object manager interface, that's why it was sort of folded in to create the nodal modifiers and the primitives and all that, which we're going to show a couple of things. There's a request for you, Chris. Can you make a ragdoll rig preset utilizing the rigid bodies so that you can apply it on any humanoid character? I think the answer to apply it to any humanoid character, it's not as simple as that, but some sort of ragdoll could be possible. I think that maybe, Chris, you have a tutorial to prepare soon.
Yeah, that would be something to try to do a tutorial. I do have a big giant ragdoll tutorial using the old bullet simulation. But an important thing to know right now is the only connections that we can make right now is just the connector tag, which is just kind of like It's just like a spring connecting from one object to another, and it pulls them towards each other. That's all we can do. Where in the bullet simulation, we had things like the cardan rotation, and we had like proper springs and all these different mechanical connections that we could do. And a lot of those are needed for a ragdoll. But if you just took like the figure object right now, exploded it, made it rigid body, and said connect all the different pieces, you'd probably kind of get like a sticky like floppy ragdoll, and it'd probably be pretty simple to put together. But yeah, that might be a question for our Rocket Lasso Live. So hit me up there.
Those are that's the ideal place to do it. A question by Mohammed: how can I import textures from Substance Painter scratches? I think that Redshift has a Substance node where you can import. I mean, Cinema 4D does have a Substance plugin, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't. The Substance engine. It's part of Cinema 4D, and I think you can do it. I haven't touched.
I'd love to see an update on that because they've implemented it, and I was using it all the time, but it was using like Substance 6, and I think there might have been an update since then. But if Substance gets a new version, it doesn't necessarily mean that Cinema is going to know how to read the newer ones. And then I don't know the Redshift workflow. I haven't done that.
Yeah, I haven't done that as well. Question 2 by Mohammed: how can I make bubbles or foam using MoGraph Redshift? A lot of bubbles, multi-instance, push apart effector, scale, first scale, then push apart, and providing you have enough of those bubbles. And foam is not that complex. It's just a subsurface scattering setup. That's pretty much it, the foam.
Well, it even goes to, we need more specificity on the question, because it could be like, is this foam, and can you fake the foam, or do you want actually teeny tiny little bubbles, or are you talking about like when you use an actual like bubble wand and you blow a bunch of bubbles, they stick together? Like all these are completely different questions that you'd be doing different systems on. Like rendering it is a very different question than how do you make bubbles like grow or stick together or make a whole stack of them so you get like that bubble cube in the center. Each of those is a unique question.
The biggest challenge I found when I was doing these kind of setups, because you can use the blue noise node to create, similar to the push apart effector with just the circles or spheres and all that, and it handles a lot of objects. The biggest challenge for me is where the bubble meets the foam, because in reality there's a border there, which is not even, it's not flat, it's sort of a bit concave, but it's not even fully spherical. And all these little details, just as Chris said, it depends on how much detail you want, how close you want to go, what exactly interaction do you want animated, do you not want animated. So many ways, but there's no simple one-click solution,
sadly.
Ribbons and balloons, blur texture, we saw that. Let's go further down. How can I open a banana? Okay. Now, my son likes to bite the tip off and then open it. I like to cut it with a knife, or you can use brute force. What I would do to make a soft body banana is actually model it with separate, each part being separate.
That's each pedal being separate.
And I wouldn't use. Sometimes when you're doing things that have a certain thickness and you want that thickness to be retained, for me, the preferred way is to do your cloth simulation. Yeah, why not? Why not show what I'm talking about? All right, this is your screen. I'm going to add my screen. Go to 2024 and open a new scene. I'm just going to show you an approximation of what I think needs to be done. I'm not going to show it with soft body. Maybe I will. Anyway, let's assume we have this plane here.
Do we have a banana in the assets browser?
I'm not going to deal with the banana quite yet, because it's going to take up.
No, it'll be a 45-minute question.
Exactly. So I'm just going to create a very quick simulation for this, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to do it this way. And this is something you generally need to remember. Right, let's assume we had this this object here, okay, and you can see it has some thickness. If I go and attach this to this cube, let's do that. Let's make this a I'm going to make this a cloth, and I'm going to set, because I want to make it rigid. Where's my mix animation? Just set it 100% so it won't fall. Let's make this another cloth rigging. So whoops, where's my simulation tag? Make this I don't know, soft body. Let's make the soft body, and let's add to this soft body a simulation tags, a connector. Turn on live update. Move this around until it touches something. Create.
It's pretty far away. It might not.
It's pretty far. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to press play here. And what you're going to see is parts of this cloth are wiggling as well. So it's not absolutely, it doesn't retain its thickness 100%. So you might as well go and create your banana peels and as separate objects with thickness and so forth. But I feel that this way is a bit more finicky. What I would do instead is use these on this object. Let me go and update this. So let me just hide the second cube, this one here. So this one has better stability because each polygon is unique. You don't have those intermediate things. And then use this in some sort of deformation to deform your other cube. You could use a surface deformer. You could use something like that. So in these cases, I prefer to use a flat surface because the banana won't squish if it's just opening. We don't want to lose the thickness of the object. So that will be the suggested technique to do something like that.
Yeah, even within this question, it goes to what your final use case is. Because let's say you do have a final banana, and it's a nice, evenly subdivided peel. It's like, well, you could do five different surfaces, and each one is separate, and you just fake it, and you like use a bend deformer, you bend each one. Another is like you have 5 separate pieces, you use cloth, and you use a connector and connect all the different ones, and maybe you use a fall off and have the connectors break as they slowly fall down. You could have one giant banana, skin on the entire thing, and then paint vertex weights so that there's going to be breakpoints in between those very specific spots, and then let tearing do the process for you. So even there, that's just using simulation. That's like 3 different methodologies, and there'd be even way more than that. So there's a lot of possibilities there.
Yep. A couple of questions for you. Are your plugins going to work in 2024?
Yes, they are already working in 2024. All you have to do is find your Gumroad email and then go to the link. And essentially, if there's a download off of Gumroad, it is updated. We updated the master file. So any download you get is the new version. And we even fixed that limitation in recall that is only working on cinema cameras. It also now works on Redshift cameras.
Nice. So we have a few other questions here. A couple more. Can I set an object as particle emitter? Example, I want to create bubbles. Yep, I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna show you a very quick way of doing that. This is so random. Let's read this. But how do you go about creating a match 3 game animation style similar to Candy Crush? Curious here. Yeah, that's a question for Chris on his live shows. Although,
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, Espresso or Python or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it does go to like either you're spending a lot of time manually animating things, or you have to like build, like essentially program a game. You have to build rules into objects. So you could say like, okay, every couple of frames, like generate new spheres. Those have simulation. If they collide with something, like they disappear and then maybe they pop back up at the top. Yep. So it's either building behaviors or spending a lot of time keyframing things when it should turn on and should turn off.
So, right. What is the next? Tell me about another exciting thing you would like to show stuff. Let's talk about some pyro.
Yeah, I was going to say it's time for pyro, I think.
And then I'm going to show some pyro as well. So let's bring up.
I mean, I'd love to see you drive because I've already done a bunch of pyro stuff on my streams. But can you start with a basic C4D emitter? I just want to see what type of approach you take.
Yeah, I can do that. So some of the improvements that have to do with pyro simulations. I mean, I've got some files open here, but I'm going to talk. I'm going to start with this.
Let's ease on in.
Yeah. Let's go slowly. So there are a couple of things you can do. For example, you can use a matrix object and emit directly from a matrix object. So let me just space these out a bit. There you go. I've already got the file, but I'd rather waste your time and do it
It's
again.
so fast to do it from scratch.
Pyro emitter now on a matrix object will create from each matrix it will emit pyro. Now, the great thing about this is that it does take into consideration the scaling and even the color. So let's go to the matrix and add a random effect. No, I'm going to go with a plane effector, and I want this plane effector to use the field's color and affect the color of these matrices. And I'm going to go here and add, let's say, a linear field. And you can go here and add a gradient. You can add whatever you want. So let's put in a gradient, and let's go and add, let's say, this. You know why? Because. And there you go. So we can change these colors over here. And now, if you go over here and enable the color, what's going to happen is that now the density is colorized, and it changes as well as you move your field through.
Yes.
So it's very easy to create art directable fire or pyro where the density has various different colors and so forth. Now, having said that, another thing you could do now, which is a new implementation, is you could go to the emitter, and you can see some amazing stuff, not only on Chris's video, but if you follow Yange on his social media, he did some fantastic wild rocket stuff. So Rocket Lasso, he did rocket stuff. So pyro emitter on this, and there you go. You have pyro coming out. And again, it reacts to scale and all that. But having said that, what I'm most excited about is using, and where is it? Density over 4, thinking particles. Yes, I hear you. I hear you. It's not the, most intuitive thing, but
good old Cinema 4D version 8.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. What's great about thinking particles, providing you're willing to accept, what's it called? If you're willing to accept this mission, is that it's the way, it provides you a way of controlling the density, the temperature, the fuel, and the color through the particles. So the only way to control all those programmatically per instance, per particle, is using thinking particles. So as far as emitting from a surface, there are different ways you can do this. But if anyone wants to start playing with thinking particles, my advice is, let's assume you want to emit from this sphere over here. Make sure, first of all, it's editable. That is one of the things you need to remember. There are ways to go around that, but they're a bit finicky. Go to Espresso and type in here, type matter, and find the P matter waves.
Oh,
this is the easiest and straightforward way to emit particles.
I would literally never use that. I always used P-Storm.
Okay, just want to say that. And it emits from a surface. You can emit from selections, you can emit from lights, and it's quite interesting what you can do with this. Now, for anyone that has touched particles, and I think I'm going to make some sort of limited series, I'm just going to show you what you can do if you are willing to, or you know how to use thinking particles, and you want to control the various pyro aspects of that. And then I'm going to show you some sample scenes. Now, let's go to I've created my own setup for Espresso and all that. I've just got the Espresso editor here and my TP geometry and TP settings. If you go to the thinking particle settings, for anyone who doesn't know, we have these custom channels. So by definition, if you go to get or set data for the particles, these are the two things where you control some of the parameters and you read some of the parameters. And these are the available channels: the age, the alignment, color, time factor, groups, and all that kind of stuff. There is nothing that relates to density or temperature or fuel in here. But thinking particles allows you to create any number of arbitrary channels. So as long as it's a float, all three, it's a float, a real. If I call it density and add it, temperature, temperature, and add it, and fuel, and add it. Now, the particle, this particular particle, has access to 1, 2, 3 parameters. And the great thing with that is it will work as a multiplier on the values you already have. So create a TP geometry. That's the way to read the particles in the object manager. Otherwise, they're doing their own thing. And thinking particles exist in a parallel universe, so to speak. So the portal to bring them here for your generation, that sounds very coherent. So right click and just go and add a pyro emitter over here. Just make sure the TP geometry has all the particles or whatever group, because you can create different groups and different groups can have different emissions and stuff like that. From this point onwards, these particles are going to emit, and they're going to emit based on the various parameters, the scale and all that stuff. So if I go and reduce the scale of the particles, which is part of the emission parameter, so the size.
They're huge.
Yep, now they're smaller. But let's go and play around with the color a bit. So let's assume I don't want temperature for these particular particles.
I was about to request that.
Sorry?
I was about to request that.
Yeah.
I want to see the smoke, which is density.
Exactly. There you go. So we have that smoke. And what else do I want to do? The other thing is I want to turn the... So set is per frame, add is per second. That's what you need to remember. And if this is 1, then any value I give it, now it's going to be that value times 1 per frame or times 1 per second. And you can always multiply these if you want to increase them. But the baseline to do this is remember that these are multipliers. And I'm going to turn on my color and leave it at white. So only density and temperature. So these particles are living for a set amount of frames. Their life, I'm going to reduce these just to get things to run a bit faster. 90 frames. So in 90 frames, they live and then they die. I'm going to set this to 30. So they will, whenever they're born, 30 frames later, they're going to die. And just a quick pass, the p-pass is what reads the particle data to do something, if you want to do anything. And what I want to do is I want to find their life age ratio from a number from 0 to 1. And that's very easy. Get the age and the life. And you just pass a math. And you can save this and reuse it. I'm just doing it here to seem a bit more smart. And just divide them. You take the age divided by, divide them. So this will give you a number that's 0 when they are born and 1 when they are dead. And I can use this number to drive the data of, let's say, the color or the density. Let's go and do it with density. So this is going to, and I can even add a multiplier to this to put in a lot of density, but I'm going to do that through the pyro tag itself. So we're going to see now that as they grow older, their density increases. And I can make them live for longer. So let's go down here and make them live for, let's say, 60 frames. So the density is changing based on their age. And these are effects that we can't really do. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make them have a burst of emission right at the end of their lifetimes. So let's go to temperature. Let's get the same value we have here, and let's put it through a range mapper.
Good old range mapper.
Good old range mapper. And what I love about the range mapper is that you can change the values that come in and go out without doing any multiplications or anything like that. So here we're receiving a value from 0 to 1, and it's spitting out the same value. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to spit a value out from 0 to 10, but I'm going to use a spline. So let me reset this, and I'm going to say right at the end, I want these to give me a value. So it's going to go 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and it's going to output 0, 0, 0, 0. At the end, it's going to increase the temperature, and we're going to see some sort of little fireball. I just want to make sure that I have temperature because it's a multiplier. So I'm going to set this to 1 and this to 0. So whatever value we put here, I can set it to, let's put it 1,000.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know what's the
So
flash.
we shouldn't have any emission. And at the end, just before it dies, we should get puffs of emission, even more. I'm going to put more because I see. There you go. And you can see, look at that. And
Nice.
this is something that you can do to one object if you are using keyframes, but to programmatically now start controlling these parameters, including colors and all that, it does require a bit of an understanding of thinking particles and Espresso. And if there's enough requests, I am going to do a tutorial. And if you want this to really explode, you just put some in the fuel, because it's always lovely to add fuel at the end. And if you just want to control it separately, do this, put this here, never add 1,000 fuel, because
10,000 fuel?
10,000
That's
fuel.
a bad idea.
Even with 50, it's going to be
dude, I'd do like 5. Yeah.
So now you're going to see that we're going to have a much bigger explosion at the end. Oh,
okay.
We need more.
Yeah.
I'm going to put 50 because it's fun.
Is there baseline fuel to multiply on?
Oh, I wanted to see if you were paying attention. I've got fuel. Oh. See, Chris is paying attention. No one else is. This is going to be boom. There you go. Big explosions now. Boom, 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 and so. And you can make the control we have here is very rudimentary, right? Just using the live. You can do it with collisions. You can do it with any kind of trigger you require. So you can make things that have density and a bit of smoke. And if they collide with something else, then suddenly you have a bigger fire and stuff like that. But let me show you some of these. Let me see. What do I have here? What's this? Color from vertex map. No, I don't want to see. Density over fall off. Yeah, this would be one of the examples where I'm just using, it's a slightly more complex thing, and I'm using a little hack with a fall off. I'm just emitting on the first frame, and I'm doing the same thing, get data, divide, and all that, and feeding the color. But here I'm using a hack so that I can use a fall off, which is basically a field in Espresso with a gradient. And now these particles are actually going to change color as they are emitted. So go from yellow to green to blue. So we can do these things as well. We can use a gradient. It requires a setup, and yet we can still control the density color using any gradient we want. Let's put this because it's a bit more fancy. There you go. So you can see that the colors are changing. And for me, despite other than the speed improvements and all that, I find it touches more on my geeky side more, because I can envision all these amazing VFX setups I can do, which I will never do. But at least I will create probably some tutorials. If you're interested, just let us know about this. Where are we now?
Yeah, there's so everybody got really quiet in the chat. I think they're all paying attention and taking notes down for how to be doing all the crazy Espresso nodes. But even that shows of the power of just being like grabbing the particle's age and being able to remap it to things.
Yes.
Like using the basic emitter is great. You can do a lot with it if you're keeping it simple. And keep in mind, there are so many powerful systems in cinema, and they all play around with each other. So you can make basic particles and clone your matrix object onto those particles, and then have the pyro be on that matrix object. And now that matrix object could be getting random colors. So now you do get random colors from a particle emission. So there's always.
By the way, you know that you can create a quasi-particle system just by using MoGraph and unclamping the list clamp. So if you ever want to do something fairly fancy without using particles that looks like particles, and show off to your, you can show off to your work colleagues. Let's set this. So I have these matrices here, and I want to move them. So we know how to move stuff using a plane effector, and we can go and move them on the Z, and they'll move outwards. All right. So what you can do, you can set this to 100, and then you can go to the field list, and you can add a time. It's over here, a time, and this every second will give you over 30 frames. It will give you the maximum value. You can unclamp this, and they will go forever. So essentially, just by unclamping the list and putting a time here, let's put 90,000 frames, and the speed you control it by the final parameter here. Let's say 1,000. So now they're going to go faster. So you can create a quasi-particle system using MoGraph, just in case you didn't know, and you can add your noises and all that, providing you don't want to generate more. That is where a particle system has an advantage over MoGraph, that it can generate new particles all the time, whereas MoGraph works with a subset of particles, but you can actually push this quite a bit.
Well, even there, you can push that even further, where you can increase your particle count. If you keyframed your count and you slowly go over time, you can increase, but you never want them to disappear. If any time one is going away, then all the indexes will change and everything will break. But as long as you're only adding to it, that can work. Of course, any new particle that exists here is suddenly going to pop to their new final position. But there is even cool rigs that you could do. Yeah, it's either they're popping into existence or they're out.
I've got 9,000 frames here.
Oh yeah, but with the rig as currently set up, every time the count increases one, it will get created, but it's going to appear as if it had existed from zero. So it's going to already be pretty far out in space. But then you could make way more advanced rigs where you actually apply like a MoGraph weight tag, and then when a particle gets born, they will start getting a weight from 0 to 100. So they could actually keep on spawning from the middle point and independently, essentially, get older and then move away from the surface, which is a pretty fun technique.
I love this. So yeah,
Ding, 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 ding.
more are spawning
points, which is interesting.
Oh, they're all because they go to the same position. Anyhow, because they're not really born. Yeah, okay. Let's erase the last part of the video. So let's look at the questions quickly. How to tear net. We won't reply to this because it's going to take up more time, because we still have stuff to show here. Packed soap foam. Yeah. If only it was possible to sit down for 20 minutes and actually create these things, we would have made a lot of money. A lot of money. A lot of these setups require, because Chris said it the best way, it all depends. Right? That's one of the most wise phrases you would ever hear. It depends exactly on what you need, not only the final outcome. If it's going to be an animation, what is your source? How close you're going to be?
How long the shot lingers on that particular thing?
Exactly.
Is it a 2-second shot or a 20-second shot? Different rigs.
And how you want to control it. So that's the other thing. If you want a specific way to art direct it, I want to change the number of big bubbles. I want to change the thickness of the foam. That may be totally different than having a set thickness, a set number of bubbles, and just making a still piece of art where you can use simple static meshes and do things. So everything changes things. So we can't respond to these questions, but you can hit Chris or me on social media. What's your social media, your Twixer thing?
At Rocket Lasso on every platform.
Hey, there you go, at Rocket Lasso. I'm at Noseman GR. So DM us with specific question. At least me, my DMs are open. If you want to ask me something, have a simplified scene. If it's a problem, do not send me production scenes. Do not send me third-party plugins. Please send me the simplest possible scene, vanilla if possible, that exhibits the problem you're referring to. If you're looking for setups, the answer may be this is too complex to solve over a matter of a tweet. So yeah.
So then you hit up Rocket Lasso Live.
Yeah.
Where on many Wednesdays through the year, not every Wednesday. I'm about to go on break, wrapping up season 5, but we did like 22 episodes this season where for 2 hours live on Twitch and on YouTube, people ask questions just like this. And then over the course of 2 hours, I just build rigs and try and reverse engineer things. And like that net question is like a perfect one for that stream, because even that's like, there might be 4 different ways of doing it, where we tear through cloth and convert it to splines, or we tear through splines and do the tearing techniques there, and using old systems, using new systems, like so many different things. So yeah, hit me up there.
So, what do you have? Do you have any to show? I can go through a few things. I'm just deleting files here now.
Did you have any fun projection files that you played around with? Because I've got the same one I did in my main file, but if you get cool ones people haven't seen.
No, I don't have any. I didn't do any extensive testing because oh, that's great, a projection deformer. That's
yeah, that's what I meant.
So I didn't really do anything in that respect. I didn't do. If you do have, I mean, please show. Just show your quick little. I love that growing thing on the face because it provides a solution for an otherwise known problem.
Yeah, let's see. Projection. Hopefully this one. Projection lines face 2. Okay, cool. So I'm going to step through this file a little bit. Okay, so I've got this final mesh. I made this mesh using a volume builder and I cleaned it up a little bit. So this is just the bust from the assets browser and a cube. I cleaned that up a bit. The basic idea, let's actually start out super basic. If I make a new shape, let's say I just make this circle and this disk here, I pull it up and I'll shrink it down kind of small. We need to give it a decent amount of subdivision. So I'm going to crank this up quite a bit. Okay, cool. Let's change the color of that just so we can see it in the stream. Okay, so now, based on that, we can create the brand new projection deformer right here. Create that, and you can see instantly in my viewport, I got these arrows facing a particular direction. So I can say, okay, I want to deform this disk to, go to the Object tab, to strike what? Well, I want to hit this remesh, this face. And instantly you see it's just going to splat directly there on the face. So it's going to be essentially intersecting perfectly. So depending on the way the polygons line up, but we've got settings like strength where you can pull back just a little bit. And now you see it pulls away from the face, or we do a little bit of offset. So you see, I can increase this. So if we do a small number like 0.1, you now see that's actually properly popping out there. The fun thing here is that we could take this and move it around. So I can freely travel around the figure and create all sorts of cool effects. You could imagine layering this up in a lot of ways or sticking decals on things. Very simple to put together. So that's one of the best parts. But even more fun than that would be using this on something like a spline. So I set up an emitter here, and I'm not going to go through all the details, but let's unhide this. You can see I've got a bunch of field forces, which I generated via a volume builder. So they're flowing in a very particular direction. The long and short of that is if I hit play, you can see I've got a regular Cinema 4D particle emitter with 0 speed. And when I hit play, they're going to start drifting in all these really fun organic directions. And it's 2-dimensional. It's perfectly flat. Doesn't have to be, but it helps with this rig a little bit. So then keep it pretty straightforward. Let's turn on this tracer. I'm tracing those particles. So we're going to get some lines traveling wherever those particles went.
Tracer for the win.
Always tracer and tracer mode and connect all objects. Always super fun. Anyway, we've got this tracer now. So that is a spline, which we can do a projection deformation on, creating a projection again, drop it as a child of the tracer. And I want to, again, project onto my remesh. And let's offset again, maybe 0.2. Now you can see I've got these splines projected, perfectly sticking onto that face, flowing around. So this immediately makes me think of maybe like Annihilation, the movie, or maybe the new The Last of Us opening, where you got all that stuff growing out from different points. And you could set up a simple emitter and then project it onto a complex surface. And then from here, I've already got a volume builder set up, so I can drop that inside. And
show the directional projection, because there's another mode. This is flat projection. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, it actually plays back pretty well too. If I play, like, considering how many subdivisions I have here, like that's pretty good playback.
Not bad.
Really cool organic growth. Actually, I don't have a good intuition. You tell me. For this other projection mode, we've got directional, but suddenly this starts aiming in some wild directions. You know,
yeah, it's
how does it choose the direction?
Yeah, it's pointing towards the object that
the axis of this. Yeah, that seems to be aiming right at it.
Yeah, that is the bust. So you're using the bust, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but
you can see it's a cone. It's a cone. So
yeah, it's it's got perspective on the projection, right?
It seems unintuitive. In the beginning, I was going because I was expecting to rotate it and all that. But if you think about it, it makes sense. Why point away from the object you're trying to project on? Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense. right? If
Yeah.
you're projecting on something and you're not projecting on it, what are you doing?
Well,
So yeah,
potentially, I might like a link field to be able to put a custom target on there potentially, because I could see wanting to animate where it's targeting.
true,
But
true. Okay,
but yeah, perspective based one. Now, of
yeah,
course, if you escape your model, which these are based on this perspective, like these are expanding beyond the edge, suddenly those points will not get deformed and they're going back to their original position. So yeah, you want to make sure that whatever you're projecting is kind of trapped within the correct range, which is a lot easier in parallel. So it's all going straight, and all those particles are dying if they hit the edge of this destruction box, this destructor.
Let me just quickly answer a very general question. Is there a consistent rule of when deformers go under an object, when the object goes under them or existing? No, they're just two different ways of applying the deformation. If you want the deformer to move with your object, because it's all a static model, you do that. If you want the deformation to stay the same, for example, a tire that rolls on a road, and you want the bottom part to be squished, then you make them siblings, essentially, under a common parent. So these two concepts, I call them the old school, where you put the deformer under the object, and the new school, although their functionality is interchangeable. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. It's just a convenience mechanism. As far as I'm concerned, you can just put everything under a null, the deformer with the object, and that will work as well, and you have a better hierarchy, but you have to click once to create a null. So if you do that 100,000 times in your lifetime, maybe that's not the best way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they work as children and they work as siblings. Exactly. And usually I put them, my rule is I always put as a child, but if I want to be moving the object independent of the deformer, I put them into a null.
Exactly.
But they both always work all the time. Yep.
That's fantastic.
What other features do we have? Anything else to sneak in? Do you happen to have the Fong tag? Do you have a demo for that?
I do not have a demo for that. It's a workflow. I mean, it's a workflow feature where you can. Let me just open a new scene. And basically, you have a couple of things you could do, and we're not going to show it in too much depth. And that is that if you go to the Fong tag, you can let's take this and make it editable, go here and create a normal tag.
Oh, you're going
now
normal.
The Fong tag can go away, and the normal tag, you can use various methods to control them with fields and all that. But I think you have quite a bit of information with that Spider-Man looking face and all that.
Yeah. I went crazy with the normal tag.
Yeah, generally this is the new ability, and then we have the normal. Let me go quickly and find it. Let's put the Fong back. We have the tools. Why do I always forget what it's called? It's called the normal editing. It was very hard for me. Normal editing, where you can go and you can essentially change or align normals based on rules like this. So now they're facing in one direction. You can make selections of polygons and so forth. So you have more control over the normal direction. And now we can even see the polygon normals and the vertex normals. You can see now vertex normals. And whenever we're talking about normal editing, it is the vertex normals we're talking about. The polygon normals is just a derivative of where the polygon is facing. We cannot edit those.
It's important to note as well that like the normals in this case are usually a polygon is like bounce, it's going to be like a mirror, like light and reflections and refraction. They all bounce perfectly straight off of it. But now we have the ability to edit those and like shift the direction in weird, unintuitive ways. So it's actually like, even though the polygon looks like it's facing one way, it's actually bouncing upward now. So it will change the way light applies and reflection applies and refraction.
Let me select a few of these, set them to align upwards, whereas the rest, as you can see, are facing in a different direction. And you can create all sorts of odd looking effects playing with normals. Normals are very heavily used in the gaming and real-time industry.
Yes.
So yeah, that will, the other thing I want to show you, I forgot about that. For anyone that wants to wrangle with points, polygons, and so forth, we can now see the polygon indices and the point indices for all the object or for selections. When you're in points, shows points. When you're in polygons, shows polygons and points. So it's very handy if you want to identify for whatever reason you're doing something. You don't have to go to the structure manager. You say, which is this point? Oh, it's 249. You know.
Yeah, very
anyone
handy.
that knows knows. It's one of those things.
Yeah, that's true. If there's going to be people who are like, oh, yes, that's so useful. And other people are going to be like, why would I need that? So you know if you need that feature already.
Yes. So I'm reading a funny comment from my very good friend Fritz. Well, indices. Well, the correct. I mean, between English and American, I don't know. I've lost count now. But indices is the official way. The plural of index is indices.
No,
whatever. It's like.
I thought it was a comment on points versus indices, which
like
in
octopus.
cinema they're used multiple times. I'm sure we can find the word points a bunch of times in the cinema interface.
What do you call two octopuses or octopi? See, that's a big question. Is it octopi or octopuses?
I mean, I like octopi just because it's a cool sounding word. But...
Yeah. You add that I on everything. Are we going to show? So let's spend a few minutes to show a few of the nodes improvements. Is that something that you think will interest people? It's going to be a bit technical. There's not huge stuff. There's been mostly a cleanup of things. I want to show a couple of things. And let me find that file. I had a file somewhere here. There you go. I'm going to find this. I'm going to show this now. First of all, let me go to my nodes up here. What I find interesting is that you have now these visual.
Your screen's not up.
My screen's not up. Yay! I did it again.
I got you covered.
There we go. So
wait. If I can have a request before you get technical with these nodes, can you show off the new notes and scaffolding?
That's exactly what I wanted to show.
Oh, I thought you guys show the technical stuff
later. So if you select a bunch of nodes and you right click or press a combination, which I'm not familiar with, and group in scaffold, it allows you to do this interesting scaffold here and change the color and so forth. And it just makes your life easier when you have complex graphs and you can see them. You can go in, move nodes out of it, move the others as a group and so forth. So it's quite a practical way to do things. And the other one is, I think, Control / which are stickies. And you can make these nice little stickies here, and you can change the fonts and all that. So if you do any of these node setups, it's nice that now you have a slightly better way of grouping and organizing your nodes.
I have a sneaky suspicion that Maxon put these features in. Like Rocket Lasso did not request those, but I think Maxon was seeing our crazy node setups that we've been building into the capsules, and they're like, we need some organizing tools for this.
Yes, indeed. Now there's been another cleanup, and this is something that you need to be aware of. Experimental. No, let's just go to all nodes here, and there's an experimental category. Now, a lot of the nodes that have been used in the past now have this yellow flask or beaker here. And one thing to note is that you can use them. They're fully functional, but they may receive changes in the future, or even some of them be removed. So don't use them to do anything that you want to have a shelf life.
Yeah, use at your own risk.
Use at your own risk. It's good for learning purposes and all that. And I would, what I'd like to show here for anyone that uses them, if you don't use them, you can say your goodbyes, and just two nodes that I find quite interesting. And it's the explode spline segments and the connect. It's a new connect now.
And the new explode.
And the new, there's another explode polygon. So explode mesh islands. And they work in the same way. This is for splines. This is for mesh islands. Now, what I want to show here, a very quick little setup of what I'm doing. Sometimes you have a complex setup, something that has either multiple polygon islands or that has multiple spline segments. And in the past, it was a bit of a chore to take this whole thing, connect it up into single geometry. That's the recommended way of bringing things. using a nodes modifier. And then you had to go through each segment. It became quite difficult to solve this problem. With the exploded line segments, you get an array of splines. And with a polygon islands, you get an array of polygon objects. But basically, these are just it's an array of splines or polygon objects, and it splits it up by itself, which using a simple iterate collection connected to an assemble collection allows you to split every single spline segment into its own spline, do what you have to do. In this particular case, I'm just getting the point positions. I'm chopping off 4 or 5 of these points, nothing fancy. I'm putting these in new spline, so it's my original circle without those 4 points. And then this little combination, these two things, they take each spline and then they assemble it into a new array of splines. And this new connect accepts arrays of splines or arrays of objects. So it's pretty automated. If you could do something to one spline or do something to one polygon island, now you can actually do it to multiple just by adding these at the end. And I did a setup a bit earlier. Let's see if I can find it. Do I have it over here? Yeah, if you are willing, anyway, if you're willing to bring in various parameters from your object manager, the best way to do that would be to, let's go here, for example. If you want to use a field, for example, to control this, you would go here and you would say, okay, I'm going to create a vertex map. That vertex map is going to have a field, and then you can use the vertex map data in here using something like a points info. The points info is one of those interesting, relatively new, I think it came a few months ago, nodes that allows you to get the point indices, polygon indices, positions, including the weights. And you can do a setup where it compares that value and does something, whatnot. Let me revert to saved. I think this one had a field thing. No, this is not the one. If I find it, give me a second. If I find it, let me go to today's.
In the chat, somebody's asking, yes, the scaffolds and those sticky notes are also in the Redshift node editor. So those are.
Oh, yes. So when I say nodes, this is my geeky part speaking. This applies to Redshift as well. So I apologize for not saying that.
I didn't include that in my video because I just didn't even think about it.
I think I have it here. There you go. So this is the similar setup: explode segments and connect, and some working within each segment is this. I'm getting the point info. I'm getting each and every one of these points, the X, Y, and Z position. And what I'm doing here is I'm comparing the weight, and the weight is provided via the vertex map. There you go. You can see weights. And because we're putting a linear field through our splines, you can see here, if the value of my vertex map is more than 0.5, just, because half the field is under 0.5, 0 to 0.5, the other half is 0.5 to 1. Then if it is larger than 0.5, then add that point in this new array and create a new spline and put them all together. And fairly simply, I can make something that looks like this, where I'm just removing any of the points while my circles are still closed using a linear field. So if you want to use fields with nodes, you have to propagate that data using some sort of vertex color, vertex map, and bring it in as a data set. The good thing with this is that it's fully procedural, right? It works with any number of these spheres, or circles, or any number of splines. You can sort of transpose this in the Z. It will still work. You can go here and do that. So you can do some interesting stuff, providing you're willing to get a bit of, a bit dirty with setting these up. But they are interesting enough. Here's another one based on exactly the same principle. It's exactly the same setup, but I've used, I think, a noise instead of a linear field, and it's got some animation. So
that's
it,
cool.
it's nothing really really special, but it does show that you can create an interesting procedural setup with 200 splines, and it plays in near real time as well. So yeah, it's just deleting points, nothing else. I couldn't bother to do anything else more intricate, and this is the whole setup. And generally, yep, go ahead.
We're quickly entering a world where I think basic node setups are going to be more available to your average user to do, like just like Espresso, where you used to have like set driver, set driven, and it's like, oh, I can play with a range mapper. There are starting to be some nice simple modifications that you can do, doing like a node based, making your own custom deformer to do certain things. But also as these nodes get added in, things like us at Rocket Lasso, that gives us more tools for us to make more advanced capsules as well. So people don't even have to think about it. You just search for our capsules, drag them directly in, and you get all sorts of modifiers. And without some of these nodes being added, we couldn't make some of these things.
Well, one note for everyone that feels a bit more excited about nodes is that you should be very thankful for Chris participating in the building of these nodal capsules, because his and his team's feedback and his brother's feedback on the subject have helped move things forward. So send good karma towards Chicago, right?
Yep.
Yeah, located on Google Maps, and draw a trajectory and send good karma that way. A few more questions, because we do have to start wrapping this up. So let's go through a few questions. Yeah, indices, all that. Vertice, let's see. I'm reading the jokes. Yes, we can do these scaffolds. Let's go down a bit. Can nodes, right? Let's see what this says. I'm not reading them before, so
dangerous.
Can nodes be used to assign deformers to specific objects? No, but you can generate deformers if you can do the math, right? So you cannot say apply to 100 objects the deformer at this position and do that. You can't do that. You might as well do that using MoGraph. And don't forget, and this is a point I always want to make, don't try and look for other tools to do things you can already do using the established tools. Because what I've realized, I'm getting some requests sometimes for how can I do that in nodes, where in fact, you can do that in using a standard Cinema 4D workflow. So I would bet a lot of money that if I did a survey, at least, I wouldn't say a percentage, but a lot of the things people are trying to do with nodes is already possible to do with standard Cinema 4D, MoGraph, and all that, without using code, Python, and whatnot. So
agreed.
Don't get too carried away to use something, a new shiny thing to do things, when it can already be done using your standard tools. And the reason is the following. If you become better at the established tools, you will become more productive, more creative. You're going to save a lot more time and have a more enjoyable life. If you want to learn a new tool to do those things, you'll have to spend more time doing things that you cannot apply one-to-one on what you were doing before. So you're expanding your knowledge base without, let's say, backwards compatibility in what you already do. So choose wisely where you put your knowledge. That's why ask your questions, not how do I do that in nodes, unless you want something specifically done in nodes. If you're looking for solutions, you can ask, how can I do this or that? So we can offer you a range of solutions. But yeah, I've seen that is something that I've seen in several occasions where users are trying to find solutions in a totally different way when they can do it with proper tools.
The tricky bit goes into, I imagine that a lot of that is born from the most difficult, what makes learning difficult often is you don't know what you don't know. So there are things you can only do inside of the new nodes and inside of capsules, but you kind of already have to know a little bit about it to know that it's like, oh, that is best served via this medium. Meanwhile, people who don't know it terribly well yet, or exploring, they're like, oh, I've got an idea. Like maybe that could be done in Node. So it doesn't get applied in the correct spot. But at the same time, I do enjoy pushing the boundary and exploring things, even if it's not super practical. But Noseman's right that if you do want to be optimizing your time and therefore probably optimizing the amount of money you're making to clients, just do the bare minimum of what you have to do to get that job done, and then use your free time to do weird, new, experimental, fun things.
True. And a nice way to gauge your understanding of Cinema 4D, if you go to the Maxon certification page and look at the topic list we require for the Pro User certification, go through those topics, right? It's a substantial list, and you need to know all those things. And here's something that, just what we're doing with the training team. One of the things we're doing with the training team is solve the problem of not knowing what you don't know, because that's the biggest bottleneck in knowledge, is that requesting the information when you don't know that the information exists is a very difficult path forwards. And that the topic list is a very good starting point. If you go through the topic list and there's a certain thing that says something and you have no idea what that is, well, that potentially is a path forward for you to see how deep that rabbit hole goes. And my typical example, right? I'm going to show this because I find it quite amusing. If you may, in the comments, I'll give you about 10 seconds. Who doesn't know what the axis extension functionality is, right? What is the axis extension functionality? Tell me, I just want to hear who doesn't know what I'm talking about. Can I have a few people that don't know what the axis extension functionality is? Because if everyone knows, I'm not going to show. If I know it, I don't know by thy name. No, you should know it as the axis extension functionality. I don't know. All right. So I've got snapping on. I've got the rotation. I've got an axis here. And I'm going to make sure that I've got my axes, right? So just to show something. If you press Control, and right-click and release your mouse and the keyboard, and you just hover around, you get this axis extension. And you can go and click now and drag and snap that direction to something else. So this is something that the majority of users do not know. Why this is useful? Well, it's useful because if you have an object, let's take an example of an object that is pointing in a certain direction. And the reason I'm showing this is I'm just going to move this in my 3D space to show you how useful that thing is. I'm going to take this and put it here on the ground. And let's assume you have a pyramid object in the plus Z, right? And you want to point the pyramid to wherever this is. Now, you can always use a target tag, but sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do. So what you would do in this case is you would use the axis extension tool. Let's do it in the top view because I want to rotate it only on one axis. You press Control, right-click, release, snap here. I'm hovering over. Now I'm clicking with the left and going over here. Now this is pointing in that direction. And this is very helpful because you can do it with the Move tool as well. I want to align this to the object without actually moving it on the axis. So you Control, right-click here, release everything. I'm not holding everything. That's the important part. And now I'm going to go and say, I'll take the axes, move it over here, and then release your mouse. So you can do all sorts of alignments using that sort of thing. And that is one of the things we require not because as a feature on itself, it's so groundbreaking, but it's because we have tons of these small little things and people are not aware of them. One thing I've been starting lately, I've been doing the quick tips for the Maxon Training Team channel, and I'm addressing various topics that exist in the certification. So if you start watching the last few weeks quick tips, you will see certain interesting things which I'm pretty sure not everyone is aware of, that you can use a linear field to align objects by size, for example, or you can rig things that are not joints and stuff like that. So go through the topics list, because that will give you what Chris said before. It will give you an insight into what you may not know. So you can get excited about the features. You can get excited about shiny new stuff. You can still do, I mean, if you go back in history and see what people were doing with Cinema 4D 10 years ago, right? I mean, it's still, even a decade ago, and it was still very capable tool. Make sure you maximize your knowledge. And Chris's channel and his live streams and his tutorials are an extremely good place to start. Maxon training team and everything else I've showed you in the beginning of the video. If you were not here at the beginning, watch it on the rerun on the Maxon training channel YouTube page when it's online. I think it's going to be in a day or so. So any closing remarks, Chris, after my monologue?
No. Thanks for the shout out. And also, like you said, you can always tweet at Noseman, and he's another person having stuff like Rocket Lasso Live and having Noseman on Twitter, being able to ask somebody who does understand what your question means and point you in the right direction. Like, that is very valuable. So cultivating a couple of those friends, being on different Slack channels, that type of thing. Very, very important. But yeah, I've got my What's New video. It's an hour and a half covering all the features. There's a couple things we didn't tackle, like the Fong tag and Vamp and a couple other things. So there's definitely more to learn for sure. But this was really fun. Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. I'm on Twixer at Noseman GR. I hope I didn't misspell it. Imagine if I misspell it. Looking for someone else. So that's me. This is Chris's YouTube channel.
Yep. Best place to follow.
There you go. That's even better here. This is his homepage. And go to YouTube on at Maxon Training Team to check out all the recorded videos and more stuff as well. I'm going to find this and do a closing. Once I bring my screen up, I'm going to do the closing routine. Go to the Maxon events and see any present, future, or past events that have happened, and you can search through this and find amazing content. Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. That's where you need to hang up 23.5 hours a day. Maxon weekends, it's the Maxon YouTube channel. And of course, go and learn ZBrush. If you are really an artist, this is the tool for you. My YouTube channel. Just go and subscribe, get your pets and relatives to subscribe. I post a video a year or two or something like that. I'm not as good as Chris when it comes to that. And here's the circle packing will give you an idea about an approach for foam and all that. I do show node stuff and whatnot. 1.6K views 7 months ago. I don't have 1.6 million views. No one wants nodes. Okay, go to the News University and check out all the stuff. If you want to see the simulations, you just go here and you type simulations, and you'll find all sorts of interesting things here about simulations. Oh, where's my simulation series? There you go. Cinematic simulations. No, that's my presentation. What? It doesn't come up first. That's terrifying. Anyway, go search here. You'll find tons of. Oh, there you go. Mixing, animation, simulations, how to use it with MoGraph. There they are. There they are. Yeah, I think they're quite interesting. Go to the old Cineversity and find an extremely high number of very relevant tutorials. And if you want to look at technical stuff, you can go and find all of Dr. Sassy's tutorials. They started 1,000 years ago. He made tutorials, carving tutorials on stone. But it's amazing how detailed they are in terms of the technical stuff and all that. So, do yourselves a favor, go watch them. The interface is going to seem a bit funny, but it's still relevant. Maxon certification, if you want to become a certified pro user or certified instructor, this is the topic list, certification topics. If you go through this list, open these up, and you find that, oh, what is this? That means you're missing on an opportunity to learn something. And we have some self-tests and so forth. Let's go here. go get your t-shirt. Cinema 4D Workflows, one word, all caps. Just go here and get your t-shirt. One per month. That's 12 per year. Wow. And yeah, don't forget, visit Chris's YouTube page and his homepage and enjoy all the great stuff he does. And at this point, I bid you all farewell. Chris, it was a pleasure seeing you here today and hanging out with you. Thank you
As
for
always,
your time and your efforts.
Likewise.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Toodaloo.